My son called me on a Tuesday afternoon in March, which was already unusual. He never called, he texted, mostly one-word replies, sometimes just an emoji if I was lucky. So when my phone lit up with his name, I actually pulled over. I was driving back from the hardware store with a bag of mulch in the trunk, nothing special, just a regular afternoon. I pulled into a gas station lot and answered, "Dad." His voice had that careful tone, the one I recognized from when he was 17 and had dented my truck. "Hey son, everything okay?" Yeah, everything's great actually." A pause. "Stephanie and I have some news. My daughter-in-law, 29 years old, worked in pharmaceutical sales, always smelled faintly of perfume I couldn't name. We'd never been close, but I tried. Lord knows I tried. We're expecting," he said. I sat there in that gas station parking lot with the engine running and felt something loosen in my chest. A grandchild. After everything, after all the distance and the quiet holidays and the strained dinners, a grandchild. "That's wonderful," I said, and I meant it completely. His name is Joel, my son. He's 32 now, and I raised him alone from the time he was 9 years old after his mother passed. Ovarian cancer, fast and merciless. 1 year from diagnosis to the end. Joel was in 3rd grade. He used to sleep on her side of the bed some nights without telling me, and I'd find him there in the morning and just let him be. I did what fathers do. I packed lunches. I went to the games. I learned how to iron the dress shirt by watching a YouTube video at midnight before his junior prom. I wasn't perfect. I worked too many hours some years trying to keep the house, keep the savings going, keep something standing for him. But I was there. Always there. When he brought Stephanie home 3 years ago, I made pot roast. I asked about her family, her work, her life. She was polite, the way people are polite to a dentist. Pleasant, slightly distant, waiting for it to be over. I noticed things. Small things. The way she'd glance at my house when they pulled into the driveway, not admiring it, evaluating it. The way she talked about her parents' lake house in Michigan. How she dropped the square footage into conversation like it was relevant. The way she called my neighborhood cute once. The way you'd call a child's drawing cute. But Joel loved her, really loved her, the kind of love where you stop noticing things clearly. So I kept my mouth shut and my guest room clean. They got married 14 months ago. Small ceremony in Connecticut at her parents' place, and it was lovely. I sat in the front row and cried a little when he said his vows, and I didn't care who saw. 6 weeks after the wedding, Joel called and asked if I'd be willing to co-sign a mortgage. They'd found a house in a suburb outside Hartford. 4 bedrooms, new construction, HOA fees, the whole picture. The asking price was $680,000. I want to be honest here. My first feeling was not suspicion. My first feeling was pride. My son wanted to build something. He wanted a home. I understood that bone deep. So I asked to see the paperwork. I drove up to Hartford on a Saturday, sat at their kitchen table with reading glasses and a yellow legal pad, and went through the loan documents. Their combined income qualified them for most of it, but not quite. The bank wanted a co-signer because Joel had a thin credit file, and Stephanie had a student loan consolidation from a few years back. I signed. I put my name on that mortgage, which meant if they ever stopped paying, the bank would come to me. I was 61 years old, semi-retired, living on a pension and some careful investments I'd been growing for 20 years. I knew what I was risking. I signed anyway because he was my son. "Thanks, Dad," he said, shaking my hand at the door. Stephanie said, "We really appreciate it," and smiled, and I believed her. For a while, things were okay. I'd visit on Sundays sometimes. Joel would grill. We'd watch football. Stephanie would join us for part of it, then disappear into another room. I didn't push. I figured we'd build something slow, the way you have to with some people. Then the baby news came, and everything shifted. They sent a group text 2 weeks after Joel's phone call, A little announcement graphic, pink and blue confetti, due date circled in October. I was genuinely happy. I saved the image to my phone. I bought a card and wrote a full page inside it and mailed it, which apparently nobody does anymore, but I was raised right. I started thinking about what I could do. I had money set aside. A separate account I'd been adding to steadily for 15 years, started when Joel graduated high school. I'd always called it, privately, the Next Chapter Fund. I'd used part of it for the wedding gift. There was still a significant amount in there, and I began to think about putting some of it toward a college fund for the baby. A 529 plan, set up in my name as custodian. I even called my financial advisor about it. I didn't tell Joel yet. I wanted it to be a surprise. The first sign I missed was in May. I texted Joel asking if they'd found out the gender yet, and he took 4 days to respond. When he did, it was 3 words, not yet. Soon. I told myself he was busy. New house, new baby coming, work stress. Men his age carried a lot. The second sign came at Father's Day. I didn't hear from him. I figured it was a mistake, an oversight. I sent a simple text. Happy Father's Day to you too, son. No response. I sat with that for a week. I turned it over the way you turn a stone looking for what's underneath. I tried to find an innocent explanation and I mostly succeeded, because I didn't want to see what I was starting to see. The third sign I could not explain away. In July, I ran into a couple from my church, the Hendersons, who lived 3 streets over from Joel in Hartford. I hadn't known they were neighbors until right then, standing in the grocery store parking lot on a Wednesday morning. We chatted for a minute. Carol Henderson mentioned she'd seen Joel and Stephanie at a neighborhood barbecue over the weekend. And the little one on the way, she said, smiling. Stephanie mentioned the baby shower is coming up. You must be so excited. I smiled and said yes and got into my car and sat there. A baby shower. No one had told me. I drove home and I called Joel. Straight to voicemail. I called again an hour later. Voicemail again. I texted. Hey, heard there's a baby shower being planned. Would love to know the details. He replied the next morning. 1 line. Stephanie's mum is handling it. Family only. I read that 3 times. Family only. I had been co-signing his mortgage for 11 months. I had bought his wedding gift. I had driven to Hartford on a Saturday with my reading glasses to help him buy the house they were living in, and I was not family. I didn't respond right away. I went outside and walked around the yard for a while. I'm not a man who yells or throws things. My father was, and I learned early that it doesn't help anything. I walked around the yard and I looked at the garden I've been working on all spring, and I tried to find the calm place. Then I sat down at my kitchen table and I called my attorney. His name is Gene, and I've known him for 25 years. He's done my estate planning, my will, 2 refinances, and helped me set up the trust I created when Joel was in college. When I told him what was happening, he was quiet for a moment. You're still the co-signer on that Hartford mortgage, he said. Yes. And you were planning to establish a 529 for the grandchild. Was planning to. Tell me what you want to do. I told him. It took about 3 weeks to set in motion quietly. Gene was careful, methodical. He did everything correctly, documented everything properly. There was nothing dramatic about the process. It was just paperwork, the kind of paperwork that changes everything. First, we contacted the mortgage servicer. A cosigner removal requires either a refinance or specific approval, but I had the right to formally withdraw my intent to support going forward and flag the account with a qualified written request. It doesn't remove me instantly, but it begins the process and it puts the lender on notice. Gene advised them that I would not be participating in any future modifications or forbearance agreements. Essentially, I removed the safety net. If Joel and Stephanie wanted to keep the mortgage in good standing, they would need to refinance in their own names only. The clock had started. Second, I updated my estate documents. The trust I'd set up in Joel's name had always had me as trustee with full discretionary authority. I didn't remove him as beneficiary. He's my son, and I'm not a cruel man. But I added conditions and timelines. I also redirected a significant portion to charitable remainder interests. If he wanted to contest it someday, Jean told me it would be an uphill climb. Third, and this one was the quietest, I did not establish the 529. I kept the money exactly where it was in my account under my control. I did not call Joel to explain any of this. I did not send a dramatic message. I did not rehearse a speech in the bathroom mirror. I just sat with it and I waited. He called on a Thursday in August. The voice was different, not the careful, controlled voice from the pregnancy announcement call. Something tighter. Something that had been rubbed down to a raw edge. "Dad, I got a letter from the mortgage company." "Okay, they're saying you filed some kind of request. Something about not being a willing cosigner going forward. What does that mean?" "It means exactly what it says." Silence. "Dad, I'm here. We need that cosign. If we have to refinance on our own right now with Stephanie on maternity leave coming up, we might not qualify. The rates have moved. We could lose the house," I said. "I understand. So, you'll undo it?" "No." The silence this time was longer. I could hear him breathing. "I don't understand," he finally said. "Why are you doing this? I wasn't invited to the baby shower." Quieter now. "That was Stephanie's thing to plan." "I know. And you let her plan me out of it. And you let her plan me out of Father's Day. And you've been letting her plan me out of your life slowly for about 2 years now. And I've been watching it happen and hoping it would turn around. Dad, it's complicated, you know how she..." "Joel." I said his name and he stopped. "I love you. I have loved you every single day since before you were born. I packed your lunches. I sat in the rain at your soccer games. I signed my name on a $680,000 mortgage because you asked me to, and because you're my son, and I trusted you. I am not asking for a lot. I'm asking to be treated like I matter." He didn't say anything. "When you're ready to have a real conversation," I said, "call me. I'll answer." I hung up. My hands were steady. I was surprised by that. He didn't call back that day. Or the next. Stephanie called on Saturday, which genuinely surprised me. I hadn't expected her to be the one to reach out first. "Hi," she said. Her voice was different than I'd heard it before. The pharmaceutical sales smoothness was gone. She just sounded tired. "Hello. I wanted to say something." A pause. "I think I've been unfair to you." I didn't rush to fill the silence. I've learned that sometimes you just have to let someone finish finding their words. "My dad and I are really close," she said. "Like, really close. And I think I made Joel feel like he had to choose. And I didn't realize I was doing it. And that's not right. You didn't deserve that." "No," I said gently. "I didn't. I told Joel I think we should talk to someone. A therapist. Couples, maybe also family." Her voice caught a little. "I want my kids to have a grandfather. I didn't have one growing up. Mine passed away before I was born. And I think that's actually part of why she stopped. I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. This is not where I tell you everything was fixed in a phone call. It wasn't. We had months of hard conversation ahead of us, some of it through a family therapist, some of it sitting at my kitchen table with bad coffee and very honest words. There were moments when I wasn't sure we'd find our way back, but I want to tell you about October. The baby came on October 14th at 6:42 in the morning. A boy, 7 pounds 4 ounces. They named him Charles. I didn't ask why. I didn't need to. My father's name was Charles. I hadn't mentioned it in years. Joel called from the hospital waiting room, and his voice was the voice of a man who had just witnessed something that had reordered his entire understanding of the world. New fathers sound like that. I remember sounding like that. "Dad," he said. "He's here." "Dad, you need to come." I was already in my car. I held Charles in the maternity ward at 9 in the morning with the light coming through those plastic blinds, and I felt something I don't quite have the right word for. Like a door opening into a room you forgot was there, something you thought was lost returning in a form you didn't expect. Stephanie looked at me from the hospital bed, exhausted and pale and more real than I'd ever seen her. "Thank you for coming," she said. "There's nowhere else I'd be," I told her. I established the 529 the following week. I named it in Charles's name, with me as custodian until he turns 18. I put enough in to cover 4 years at a state school if he wants it, with room to grow. I didn't make a production of it. I just sent Joel the account details in an email and said, "For Charles, no strings, just love." He called that night and we talked for 40 minutes. Not about any of it, not about the mortgage or the shower or any of the hard months. We just talked the way we used to when he was young and would sit on the end of my bed some evenings and just tell me things about his day. The mortgage, for what it's worth, they refinanced in November. Their own names, their own credit. The rates were higher than when they bought, but they made it work. Joel got a promotion in September that helped. They didn't need me on the paperwork anymore. I'm not sure they ever really needed me on the paperwork. I think they needed to know I was there. And somewhere in all of this, I needed them to know that being there is not the same thing as being invisible. I turned 63 in December. Joel and Stephanie brought Charles to the house, and we had cake from the bakery on Maple Street, where I've been buying birthday cakes for 30 years. Charles slept in a car seat on the kitchen floor and made small sounds that could have been anything. Dreams, hunger, just the body learning to exist in the world. I watched my son cut cake in my kitchen, and I thought about the Tuesday afternoon in March when he called from whatever road I was on. The bag of mulch still in the trunk. The ordinary day that turned out to matter. There are things I'd do differently. I'd speak up sooner. I'd say clearly and directly this isn't working for me before it reached the place it reached. I think I was so afraid of losing him that I made myself small, and making yourself small doesn't protect anything. It just teaches people how small they're allowed to make you. I'm not saying what I did was perfectly right. I'm saying it was the only language left to me after the quieter languages failed. And it worked. Not because of the money, but because it cracked something open that needed to be cracked open. Stephanie found her way to honesty. Joel found his way back. And Charles, all 7 pounds 4 ounces of him, will grow up knowing his grandfather. He'll sit in this kitchen. He'll hear stories about his grandmother, the woman I loved who left too soon. He'll know where he comes from. That's what I wanted. That was the whole thing. That's all it ever was. I've been turning this whole thing over in my mind for months now, and the part that keeps coming back to me isn't the mortgage paperwork or the letter from the servicer or even the 73 texts. It's the Tuesday afternoon in March. The bag of mulch in the trunk. The ordinary day I pulled into a gas station because my son called, which he never did. I almost didn't answer. I thought maybe it was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. None of it was. Here's what I've come to understand. The way you allow people to treat you is a kind of teaching. Not the loud kind, not the kind you intend, but teaching all the same. For 2 years I made myself smaller and smaller, trying not to cause trouble, trying to keep the peace, telling myself Joel was busy, Stephanie just needed time, things would turn around on their own, and every time I accepted a little less, I was telling them without a single word that a little less was acceptable, that I could be edged out quietly, and I would go quietly. I don't blame Stephanie entirely for what happened. She told me herself in that raw, tired voice from the hospital room that she hadn't fully understood what she was doing. She had her own wounds around family and belonging, her own reasons she built walls. People usually do. The ones who hurt you are rarely doing it out of pure calculation. More often they're just moving through the world according to patterns they haven't examined yet. That doesn't make it okay. But it changes what the right response is. What I did, pulling back from that mortgage, sitting with my attorney Jean, redirecting the trust, That wasn't revenge in the way people mean when they say the word with satisfaction. It wasn't about punishment. It was about re-establishing something true. It was me saying, I exist. My presence in this family has weight and value, and pretending otherwise isn't love, it's erasure. The thing about integrity, real integrity, not the word people put on motivational posters, is that it sometimes costs you something in the short run. It cost me months of uncertainty. It cost me sleep. It cost me mornings where I sat in my kitchen not knowing if my son would find his way back to me. That's not a small thing to live through. I want to be honest about that. But what doesn't cost you anything doesn't change anything either. Joel had to do something hard too. He had to look at his own choices. The Father's Days he let go by, the shower he didn't push back on, the slow drift he'd allowed, and own them. Not blame Stephanie, not explain them away. Just own them. That kind of honesty takes something out of a person. It's not comfortable, but it's the only way through. And Charles, 7 pounds 4 ounces, born on a cool October morning, named for my father without anyone having to ask. I don't know if Joel did that deliberately or if it just felt right when the moment came. Either way, it tells me something about what's underneath all of it, underneath the distance and the hard months and the paperwork and the 73 texts. Underneath all of that was still a son who remembered where he came from. I held that boy in a maternity ward and I thought, this is what you protect when you refuse to disappear. Not money, not pride. This.